And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Hello and welcome to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice while doing our best to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. I'm Joanne Shaw, owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design, and with me is my co-host and co-author, Matthew Dressing. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Joanne, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Matthew Dressing, owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. As landscape designers and gardeners, we believe it's important and possible to have great gardens, which are sustainable and low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen.
That's right. And in the final live episode of Down the Garden Path this season, and with Christmas fast approaching, tonight we'll tackle the question of buying live trees versus fake trees, or everlasting. Sometimes I think it's a nicer way to call them everlasting.
Yes.
As we compare the pros and cons and dilemmas of both. So which tree do you put up in your house? Which do you think is better, real or fake? We'd love to hear from you. Send your questions to downthegardenpathpodcast@hotmail.com.
That's right. So what type of tree do you put up every year?
We have I'd like to think of it as an everlasting as opposed to fake, but yeah, I mean, I love the look and the idea of a real tree, but, and we can talk about, there's so many pros and cons both ways, right? But we do have a pre-lit artificial tree.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah, we always cut or go buy a pre-cut live balsam fir is our tree of choice. However, having said that, we do have two everlasting pencil trees that run down a hall because they just tuck into corners nicely.
Yeah.
Because we have so many decorations and whatever. And then this year we actually adopted or got my parents' old everlasting tree. They just wanted a ready for a new one, a different look. Yeah. So now I have another tree up, filled with ornaments. So altogether,
are they all up? Are you up?
They're all up. They're all up. And then I actually have an everlasting tree of Nana's as well, which like Dit's bears climbing up that she really loved. So all in all, it's a 5-tree Christmas in my household.
Wow.
With ornaments, and that's not even counting tabletops and other little ones. So Christmas.
Oh my goodness. So did you get your real one then?
Not yet.
Okay.
We are going to go this week to get that.
Okay, so then that will be a 6, or was that included in the 5?
Yeah, that'll be the 5th of the big one.
Okay. All right.
So lots of trees.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that the topics always, I think people like falter back and forth, right? And I think, speaking to the live trees, there may be people who think it is not environmentally sound to be, quote unquote, cutting down trees, right?
That's right. But it actually is. And there's a lot of thought and effort that goes into that. So which one would you like to attack first? We're going to go for everlasting, our pretty way of saying fake and artificial. Or do we want to dive into all things live trees?
Let's go with live.
Let's go for live. Just as we start our conversation, we've got Eric has written in, hey, Down the Garden Path, I'm so lazy, fake trees. I even have a plastic big bag enough that I keep my decorations on the tree and just put the bag over it and store it. Voila.
No
Done
way.
for next year.
Eric, no way. Oh my gosh.
That's cool. Well done, Eric, that you have that huge tree.
And that you must have the storage space, because yes. I'm thinking like I have to break my everlasting tree up into 3 pieces to get it back in the box. And then that box takes up a lot of space and storage. So kudos to you, Eric. That's kind of brilliant. I might even say that to I don't know that we have any place for it though. Like, I don't know. I think
Right?
my husband would like that idea, although he doesn't do the decorating. So, he did do some decorating this year, but yeah, interesting. So the live one is interesting because I think people do think that they are being more environmentally friendly by getting an everlasting one because, oh my gosh, we're cutting down trees for Christmas trees. But really they're grown for Christmas trees, right? We're not cutting a forest down.
Right, right. We're cutting trees that is on a tree farm, specifically grown, cut down and harvested, and then replanted every single year for Christmas trees. So we are not wildly clear cutting mountainsides or hillsides or fields. We have specific trees and seedlings that farms will plant every year. And for every tree that is cut and harvested, we are seeing farms place 1 to 3 trees or new seedlings transplanted out into that field. So your one is going to equal 1 to 3 more for
Mm-hmm.
following years. And yeah,
Yeah.
so they're planted a long time too. So on average, I would often get the question at the garden center, on average, depending on the species, our Christmas trees are going to grow up to 15 years out in the field for harvest. And that's
Wow.
depending on size and species, right? But the average one, that's 6 to 7 or 8 foot. We're going to see anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So
Yeah.
our trees are only 7 to 10 years. But yeah, they're definitely reused, grown for that purpose. But
Yeah.
also, a lot of places in Canada and the United States have full-blown Christmas tree recycling program. So right now, a lot of the provinces, there are local ones where you can go right up into the provincial dump sites, and there's a specific Christmas tree area where they can be recycled and turned into municipal mulch. Same thing in the States. The states have up to or over about 4,000, I think I recently read, 4,000 Christmas tree recycle programs across the nation. So it's not just a dump to the edge. There's definitely purposes in an afterlife for our Christmas tree.
Right, right. And you can do that personally too. I know our dear friend Nancy Green who will she gets a real one every year. So she does go and get a 12-foot balsam fir, and then she puts it in her backyard, and the birds and the critters and everybody has a party in it till the spring, until it's basically then mulch and she kind of breaks it up and places it around the garden.
Yeah.
So she kind of does that herself, and I know a lot of our listeners do, and I've seen a lot of gardeners and different gardener groups do that as well.
Yeah, and that's something people forget too, is that huge field that we're growing our new fresh cut Christmas trees, right? That's all space for insects and wildlife and birds and all of that to live and grow and continue uh, to do their own life cycle. So it's a huge habitat that we're
Mm-hmm.
restoring and cycling through for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is I was doing some reading prior to the show about the expense though. So I think that's where it becomes a little tricky, is how to know, like, if you're saving money by doing, because everlasting trees are expensive, but more and more real trees are getting expensive. So I was doing some reading about there is a shortage because, and really it's climate change. They're not, you said the average is 7 years, but because we've been in a drought for the last couple of years, even in the winter, our snow cover hasn't been like it used to be when we were kids. Or when
Yeah.
I say when I was kids, you're younger than I am, but so some of the farmers, like, the trees are just not growing, and they're not able, almost like any other crop, right? They're not harvesting the same amount that they usually harvest.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Like just like you said, with the massive size of these farms and the space these trees need, these saplings are not irrigated
Yeah.
individually. A lot of the farms, right, they rely on regular rainfall and
Yeah, Mother Nature.
establishment. Right. So with drought or harsh winter or even its animals, a farm could lose up to 15+% of their crop every year. So there's trees lost.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, with climate change, right? All the drought, even just the soil starting to erode and change. So we're seeing the growing conditions themselves are gone. And also, just even in Canada, in the last 5 years, between 2016 and 2021, over 500 Christmas tree farms have vanished. Same thing in the States. They're just completely, yeah, I think we probably read the same article. I think it was CBC or CTV, something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and overall the prices this year are going up of 10 to 12%. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the climate change, and then we're also seeing
Fertilizer,
fuel,
right? Like all those
fertilizer.
things. Because
Yeah,
somewhere I'm trying to think the Brennan family who've been doing it for 40 years said, you know, they used to be 10 cents. The plugs used to be 10 cents
yeah,
for a tree, and now they're $1.50. Now $1.50 still sounds pretty cheap, but those are little tiny things, right? And when
yeah.
you're planting, you know,
To go
hundreds
to
of
replace
thousands of them,
1,500,000, yeah.
yeah, that's a lot. So yeah, so it was really really interesting research. We both did the same research for the show, so that's good.
Yeah, we both read that article. Awesome. Yes. So there's lots that go into the Christmas tree, and that's why we're seeing all of these prices. This year, the average price for a real tree is about 85 or
Mm.
$86 US, or depending again on who it is, that always factors into it, about $116 Canadian. With Fraser fir being your
Hmm.
obviously, and the Nordman firs being your most expensive in that
Okay.
group. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we mentioned balsam fir, but
Hmm.
there are a few other types. So balsam fir is one of our main Christmas trees. We're going to see it for the scent is the main feature
Yeah.
of your balsam fir. Those flat needles, medium dark green. Again, a very heavy drinker. Balsams love to drink water, so make sure you're keeping it watered. And we have some moderate longevity, but we see things like our Fraser, which is still one of the most popular trees with that dark green needle, that bright blue undercast, has a minor scent, so it trades the scent, but it has a great needle retention. So if you're worried about a mess of a live tree and the upkeep of it, I mean, we're always going to have to water, but we do have a greater needle retention with our Fraser and our Nordman firs, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's also a couple other ones we'll often see. Obviously, the Scots pine,
Mhm.
light pine scent, good needle retention, kind of that blue green, that prickly pine that we always have out there. But then watch out for the white pine, is another popular pine
Yeah.
that you can see out there. But
Yeah,
note too,
sure.
it's not naturally that dark green. A lot of the
Mhm.
garden centers or places that you'll find, unless you're cutting it down, if you're buying it retail, they're often spraying the trees with an organic dye, yeah, to give it a
Really?
really dark, dark green. Because a lot
Ooh.
of people complain that that silvery, light silvery blue green almost looks too diseased, or it
Oh,
looks
interesting.
malnourished. Yeah, so they
I thought
teach
you were
you
gonna
the
say it
colors
looks
of
like
the
a
light.
fake tree.
Yeah, it looks like a fake tree.
Yeah.
Why is my tree dead already? I just
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly, exactly. When we did get them when we were first married and the kids were little and we did the whole cut our own trees down, which is not any fun, by the way. But anyway, that's not.
Yeah.
But um, we liked the pine, so it is higher to. The other trick about the pine tree is it's harder to hang ornaments because the needles, the branches are much softer, right?
Especially on the white pine, yeah. And then the Scots
Hmm.
pine has a little bit of a thicker branch, but the needles are so clustered there and they're sharp, and it makes a very dense outer layer of needles. So when you get it hung in there, it can be hard to hang. So that's definitely
Yes.
one of the considerations when you're picking your Christmas tree, right? What kind of ornaments, what kind of look do you want? And that's why we ended up picking. We have a balsam fir, but
Okay.
we are a Hallmark family. I get it from my mom, honestly, but we love the bigger Hallmark ornaments, the series and
Mm,
stuff. And some of the
okay.
balsams and the pines, they just don't hold them. So we have a
Yeah.
couple extra trees.
I see. I see. So that is good. So yeah, the Ray has written in and he says that he actually works for Christmas Tree Farm and it is the best thing for the soil to stay healthy after we cut down the Christmas trees. Down the trees for Christmas, it is good for the soil to rotate the growth of these trees in the field. So cutting them down is good. And he also has a cousin that has a fake tree and he keeps the tree decorated when he stores it. He purchased a very large Christmas tree bag online to shove over the tree and he stores it that way. It works amazingly well. So yeah. So thank you, Ray. And that is cool to know that you're working at Christmas Tree Farm. And do people, I'm wondering, is that still a thing to go and cut your own as well? Because that's like a different kind of Christmas tree farm, right? Like some that you're going and you're picking them that are already cut down and kind of stacked. And I think of the Boy Scouts, right, are typically something like that. And I know garden centers have them, you know, they would purchase them from a tree farm, but then they have them for sale at a garden center.
Yeah, so you tend to have the bigger ones that will sell or export trees. They're the wholesalers, or they provide commercial trees. And then you have much like the one, I forget the name from the article that we read, but they're just over in Bowmanville, if I'm remembering
Brennan, yeah.
correctly. Yeah, and they're more of a cut your own lot. So they're doing a lot of the same practices where they're replanting trees, etc., and have blocks of trees available.
No, I'm sorry. Powell. So Powell, yeah, George Powell, George and his wife, Marianne Powell. They've been growing trees on the Cut Your Own farm in Bowmanville for more than 40 years. Shirley Brennan is the executive director of Canadian Christmas Tree Association. So sorry to mix up those two names. But just so we're being clear, that's great to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is interesting.
It is always very interesting. And Canada in 2021, a fun Christmas stat, exported over 2.4 million fresh cut trees in 2001, and 97% of them just went south into the States.
Really? That's interesting, eh? Because you would think they would have more than we have.
Yeah.
But not really, because I guess they have many states that are too warm to grow, right?
Right. They have a lot of warmer states. Yep. And they have a different topography and soil and stuff like that. So, yeah, up here in Canada, it's Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and some of the Maritimes as well. And in the US, the top growing states usually are Oregon, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Washington. So, lots of people growing lots of Christmas trees.
Okay. You know who isn't? Did you find your research about IKEA? Did you get?
No, what is IKEA doing with Christmas trees?
Yeah, so why isn't this kind of funny? It kind of contradicts what we just said. So what? So basically, this year they've chosen not to sell real trees because the brand is going environmentally friendly. So,
interesting.
I know. So although the article doesn't say,
that's my first question. Is it sounds like if they're not going live trees as or as environmentally friendly because you can regenerate them and have those regenerative agricultural practices, how is the creating the everlasting?
Yeah, you know what? It's not saying. So all I said was, why isn't IKEA selling Christmas trees this year? And it says they chose not to sell Christmas trees this year because the brand is going environmentally friendly. So sorry, it doesn't say whether that means they're not selling everlasting or they're not selling real.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So let me just, make an ambiguous comment on the show. I'm sorry. If there's anybody from IKEA listening, could you clarify?
Yeah.
So there you go. Or anybody who's been to IKEA lately, you can clarify maybe. What we'd love it. Some support here. Sorry. So talk about on-site during show research. So there you go.
Yeah. A couple other things important if you're doing your live Christmas trees. One of the main questions we often get is, do we need a fresh cut on the Christmas tree? And the answer is a resounding yes. You do need to always give your Christmas tree a fresh cut. You do not need to give it a huge fresh cut. Half an inch is more than adequate. What we want to do is just reopen the phloem and the xylem so we get that water to come out and rehydrate that water. I've also had the question, well, can I cut it on an angle to get more surface area? And the answer is no, because the main reason is your angled cut, your water level is going to drop down, right, at the top of that angle. But then the phloem and the xylem are going to still try to pull. They're going to pull air. And now you get air pockets that start to block the veins and everything else up there.
Okay.
Always a fresh cut.
So when you say that, so if they cut it at the garden center and then you spend the day and whatever, and then by the time you get home and then you put it outside for a couple of days, wait for the weekend to set it up, do you still need to you need a new cut? Okay.
New cut. So if you're going to leave it outside to keep it cool because you're waiting for that sort of thing, family
Yep.
event or kids, you don't get a fresh cut there, but get one at home. When you get
Oh,
the
okay.
fresh cut, you've at most pushing it, you've got 6 hours, but the best window is 0 to 3 hours. So as
Really?
yeah, and then you start to have the sap heal over, but you also then again you've got air exposed there as well, so you get some air
Oh,
bubbles
okay.
and
Okay.
things which can affect.
Yeah, and that would kind of cause like needle drop would be one of the things, right? Because not enough water. Because we do get those questions, and we had one midweek about needle dropping, which brings me to so fresh cut is super important, not letting it dry out. So that container, and I can remember, like I remember growing up, and like we had the little tree stand that had like you barely like you basically watered the floor, and like 30% of the watering can went in the little metal holder for the tree, and the rest went on the floor, right? Underneath. That's what the tree skirt's for, right? To hide all the water
Yeah.
that's spilled underneath the tree. But nowadays they're making them much better, the tree stands, so you can make sure that you're putting water. But then you get into, I know people would say, put an aspirin or put some sugar, but the tree preservatives, they really do make a difference, don't they?
Yeah, and you know what it is? It's an anti-fungicide and bactericide, and it prevents those from starting to form crystals and bunches and blocking off the veins of the tree. So it allows the water to continue to pass. It prevents that fermenting of sap stuck in the ending of the deading of the wood. So yeah, so fresh tap water is always best to just
Okay.
give it that, and it doesn't need any food or fertilizer or anything like that. And then, yeah, if you have I think Miracle Grow does one. There's a brand often out in Independence called Stay Fresh,
Mhm.
SCA Fresh, that you can also use to keep that tree drinking and encourage that drinking. Yeah, and I always like to use those at the beginning, especially once you get that first drink. Make sure that first uptake of water has a lot of that in it to help break down those spots so that subsequent waters keep flowing through. Yeah, so you
Mhm.
don't need as much throughout the rest of it as you do right
Okay.
in the beginning. But it is
Okay.
good to hit some up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Boxing Day, you don't need to add any more Stay Fresh, but
Yeah, you know what? At Boxing Day, I don't, and we usually have our balsam. We're getting it late this year. We usually get it a little earlier in the month, but we have ours up till about the 15th of January, and then it really starts to drop needles. And if you're worried about needle drop, how dry your trees are, you can test them before you buy them. Let the
ooh.
branch come out, grab a lightly or firmly grab your hand and just run it down from the inside of not the of like the trunk, but 6 to 8 inches. Grab the needles and just firmly pull on them with your hand. When you open your hand, you should at most see 1 to 3 needles. If you have a whole bunch of needles after a few pulls in different spots, and each time has needles, they're dry, they're ready to drop. Because
Oh.
we think that they've cut them right there and they've shipped them. All of these trees have been cut in August and September when they're
Mm.
out in the field and they're drinking to go overwinter themselves. They're drawing up the water and the nutrients, and they're preparing to support their roots and go dormant. So we cut them while they're trapped with water. Whereas if you go and do your own cut tree right out in the field, like in Bowmanville,
Mhm.
and I have bought from that farm, and we had a
Mhm.
quality tree, so I don't mean to be
No,
knocking
no.
this.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, but biologically, the tree has pushed its water down into its roots. It's stored to go over winter. So you tend to have typically a drier tree that way. Yeah.
Mm.
So there's your fresh cut versus cutting your own. They're cut at a point in their life cycle where they're trapping that water in. That's how they last that long. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Good to
We
know.
have piles of questions
All right, let's go.
coming in. We have lots of questions. Who do we have here? Da, 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 da. I see Cindy. We have hi Joanne and Matt. If I buy a living tree from my home for my home, which I do about the pot, the soil in my house to prevent any critters from making a home in my house, and then should I put the tree outside for the winter? So this is one of the things I think we have on
It's
our.
a fur. It's a fur.
Oh, sorry, I didn't read that. Thank you,
It's
Joanne.
okay.
Sorry, Cindy. It is a fir tree, yes. So we were going to talk about that as we go. One of the things, speaking about live Christmas trees, is there's a lot of programs out there where you can rent your own potted Christmas tree and then return them to the people. This is very popular, as I've understood it, in the UK, and is picking up here as well. So if you do have a living tree in a pot, you do have a window when you can keep it inside, and then you have to put it back outside, or you're stuck with it all year until the spring comes. So you usually have a window of about 10 days for it to come in from the outside, to be decorated and Christmasized, and then put back outside. So what
Okay.
it'll do is it's cooled off and it's adapted, but now you're warming it up again. So it's a little bit of a warm spell. If it's longer than 10 days, 2 weeks ish, she's going to fully adapt. And then it's like putting our houseplants out. They're going to shock. It's going to be,
Yeah.
they've adapted, they've warmed up, they're ready to go again. And the spike to -3 or whatever is going to hurt them. So you only have that 7 to 10 day window. And then you do want to put it outside, make sure it's watered first, and put it in a wind protected area. So to answer Cindy's question, hopefully to protect it, you're just watching it as it goes dormant. You keep it well watered. You could put it in a bag as long as it's well watered, and nobody should get in there. Or once, Cindy, it freezes, nothing should be able to dig in there through the frozen soil. So you should be pretty good. Yeah. So that's something. Yeah. So take a look. We were trying to find someone for a show for a rent your own tree, but there's a lot of places that you rent the tree for the Christmas holidays. They drop it off or you pick it up, and then they will come around, and or again you drop it back off. And you rent the Christmas tree, and then it gets planted out in a farm or resold, or there's a lot of different things people will do for it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think the one we were trying to get a hold of was in the US. So trying to talk to that. So hopefully maybe we'll do that next year as a show. Lori has written in and she said, we purchased a beautiful blue spruce tree this year. And my question is this: is there any way or scientific study that shows you can actually plant your cut tree back into the ground to grow? We get that question often, don't we, Matt? Can a new root system take place? I would love to have this tree in our yard. Thank you. Oh, Lori.
Lori, unfortunately, the answer is no.
No.
It is done. You would have to take, to have that tree or propagate that tree, you'd have to take hardwood cuttings in the early winter or late fall, pot them up, and overwinter them in a low heat, minimal heat greenhouse, just at around 0 or so, and then plant them out the new seedling. So no, the tree does not have that ability to do so. And being cut and then watered, the tree is very, very stressed already, trying to survive and do its thing. Her last thought is to do roots. She'd spend so much energy, the whole top that you wanted to keep would end up dying and spending itself in the attempt.
And like you said, so Lori, I don't know if you caught it, these trees were cut. So it might be a beautiful blue spruce, but it was cut down in August. So it's, and even how they grow, and Ray can maybe speak to this from the Christmas tree farm, they're root pruned, like they're the ones that are meant and grown for a Christmas tree are treated differently than the ones we would buy at a nursery and put in one of our landscape installations, right? They're root pruned and they're kind of, they're treated a little bit differently too, right?
Yeah, they can be grown and fed and other practices that are applied to the tree.
But they're not like wrapped in burlap and you know what I mean, like all the things that happen with those trees that we can put in our yards. The Christmas tree farms handle it differently too. So but yes, it's unfortunately, I think of like a house plant, we all wish we could just put them in water and then they'll grow roots, right?
Yes, that doesn't happen.
I know, but I enjoy the tree while you have it, Lori, and definitely put it in after you're done with it. Put it in your backyard for the critters, and then you can cut up pieces of it in the spring, and put them around your other plants. So yeah,
that's right. Yeah, Christmas boughs make great mulch for overwintering perennials. Things like heucheras and other perennials that tend to die back, or a little edge on your, or kind of a little push in the zone for you, or need a little bit of extra winter protection. They make great to lie over.
And Olivia says she is all for real Christmas trees. As we stated, if recycled properly, they make great mulch. We need more natural mulch for our gardens, and these trees do that. Love your show. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Olivia. Thank you for listening.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Olivia. Thanks for writing in. Thanks for listening. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here live on Reality Radio 101. If you're just joining us, it's the last live show of the season before we vanish for our Christmas holiday. So, wishing you Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone. I'm Matthew Dressing here with my co host and co author, Joanne Shaw, and you're listening to Down the Garden Path. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting and relevant topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from our research and from the guests that join us here on the show. Don't forget you can spend more time with us down the garden path. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Down the Garden Path Podcast is our handle there. And don't forget you can find us on all your favorite podcast providers, as well as lots of past content, including an episode we just released that we did not air on Reality Radio 101. We had a lot of questions asking us about Amaryllis. So Joanne and I have posted a quick 20-minute extra episode on all of your favorite podcast providers on how to grow and care for your Amaryllis. So don't forget, while you're there, hit that subscribe button to be notified of new content like that individual episode that we have not aired here on Reality Radio 101. And don't forget to like, share, and leave us a comment. As always, we love hearing from you, our listeners. Write us anytime with your Christmas questions, plant questions, etc. at Down the Garden Path Podcast at hotmail.com. And don't forget to visit our websites. You can find Joanne at www.down2earth.ca and myself at www.naturalaffinity.ca. Continuing with some of the questions, Karen wrote in, I think we've already touched on it. Can we feed our live trees when we water to help preserve the needles? Thanks. Your recipe, please. I don't have a specific recipe, but the Stay Fresh and the Miracle Grow tree preservative is the best thing we need to do. We don't need to do any like typical fertilizers or anything like that.
Yes. Yeah. And no like sugar and aspirin and honey or, different things like that. You are best wherever you're purchasing your tree, from the tree farm or the garden center or the nursery, ask them what they recommend. They'll probably have something right there for you. And that is a really important thing to get the tree off to a good start.
That's right. Greg also writes in, hello, garden show. My family and I prefer a live tree for Christmas, but it's getting so expensive to just purchase a live tree for 2 or so weeks. I'd rather spend a bit of money for an artificial tree, but have it for many, many years. Thanks for the show tonight, and Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to you too, Greg. Yeah. Thank you for writing in. We hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah, and I think that's where our family lands. I mean, as much as I'd love a real tree, and what I do is when I buy branches for my outdoor urns, I actually bring in quite a few of those. I make sure I have extra branches that I can bring in for my decorating around my house, because I do love the real branches. But the real Christmas tree, we just end up, I love the pre-lit aspect of it too. So I have to say I love those lights. So, and the fact that we, invest in a pretty good one and we know that we'll have it a long time. I do know, though, as we segue into why, the pros and cons of an everlasting tree or artificial tree, is I do know that when they're done, and it is goes to the landfill. Like, it is plastic. And and wires and metal, like, I guess maybe the metal bars could be saved or reused and stuff. So I don't know much about if there's a recycling program for fake trees as well as there is one for real trees. So it's a hard issue, Greg. I'm with you there. Like, I know and you meet people, like there's people that, like your parents, you said they just, I'm sure they had that tree how many years, right? 30 years or so.
I can't even. Yeah. So forever, and now we've got it, and we're still using it. So that is a thing too. Like, I'm sure Value Village, like there's a different, like, the life cycle of that tree could be 50 or 60 years, really, right? Yeah. But I know it does inevitably end up in the landfill. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. As far as the metal rods, they probably would be savable, but the labor into stripping them and everything, and some of the metals as well. They can have some toxic chemicals, or have been known to have not be pure like steel or pure aluminum. They may have contaminants in them. So when you do break them down, they have other noxious things like lead in them as well. So, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, do you know some brand names? Yeah, no, like, because I know from you're working at the garden center, and although in the past you dealt with more of the real trees, do you know any brand names of everlasting trees?
You know what, they've kind of changed over the years. I remember one of the big ones, and they might still be around in the States, Burkana, or Barcana, I think it's called. They had a wonderful Christmas tree for sure. The Burkanas, they were always very popular in the garden center. But yeah, they've started to change as well. So I'm sorry, I don't have
no, I put you on the spot. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I eventually started after Burkana left. They just started to become, Hoffman brought them in, or another company that did another thing brought them into their line and sold them to you.
And a lot of them on the websites just say everlasting, pencil tree with 300 lights and that kind of thing. So they're not really giving a lot of information. I think the other advantage, again, we know the disadvantage, but I think the other advantage is what Greg said about the 2 weeks. So the advantage with an everlasting tree, and lots of people do it, right? Like November 12th, they put the tree up, and there's a lot of people that have Orthodox Christmases that into January. And so, their tree might be up from mid-November until mid-January. So you certainly could not do that with a real tree.
Right? They're pushing it. Depending on your beliefs or your holiday celebration, most certainly that's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. However, with the Brazier firs, which are the crosses between the balsam of the Frasers and the Nordmans, their needle retention is ridiculous. And my example is this. I love to make wreaths from scratch, and I used the Brazier fir, which was a new fir at the garden center when I got it.
I know, I haven't heard. Like, did you mention that earlier in the show? I didn't catch the Brazier. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mention that one. Yeah.
Okay.
But I made a live wreath out of it, and I hung it up around about the first week of December. It finally turned from green to yellow, and I threw it out, or dismantled it, so I kept the frame at the beginning of June, and that was it. Yeah, in like 2019, I think. So we had this live tree that we stayed or wilt-proofed for. Yeah, this live wreath for 6 months. No water.
Oh, did you treat it with wilt-proof though?
I sprayed it with wilt-proof, so it's an anti-desiccant, so it definitely slowed it down. Right. Yeah, and then it finally turned. So they're so the tree definitely artificials for that for sure, but they are pushing it with some of the new.
Yeah, for sure. And wilt-proof is something you would use when, like, a wreath that you can't put in water and that you've kept outside. But we wouldn't use wilt-proof on a Christmas tree, would we? That we're bringing inside?
You could, but I wouldn't spray it inside. It would be cold and awkward to do it outside. Yeah. And if you end up buying your wilt-proof for your Christmas greens, your wreath, or whatever, remember it's multi-purpose. You don't just use wilt-proof in the winter or in the fall. You can use it in the summer as an anti-desiccant for newly planted perennials, trees and shrubs, and other things like that. So yeah, so keep that in mind.
That's a whole other show, right?
That's a whole other show. That's it.
That's right.
It is estimated that 80% of all the Christmas trees worldwide come from China, are produced and sent out from China. And then looking at our prices again on average, right about now, our average price is about $122 US, or $169 Canadian for the average everlasting tree.
I think that's pretty low.
That's pretty low compared to especially the real tree, right? That's something you're doing every single year. And this tree is going to be something that it's 167 divided by 20, right? I mean, it's less than $16.
No, I meant like, I think 160, that's like for a small tree. Like, I think with your regular 7-foot trees, like, I think you're still talking several hundreds of dollars.
And again, that all comes down to brand and quality, where you buy it, sales,
for sure. The number of lights.
So many factors, right? Light, tips, all that sort of stuff. Yes. So the average in the market, if we look at it as a whole, that still tends to be where the buying power is in that range.
Wow.
Which is
Yeah.
surprising because working at the garden center, the Burkanas, I mean, they were 7, 8 foot trees with upwards of 1,800 lights, molded tips, and they were 809, like 899.99.
Yeah.
So yeah, it totally comes down to what we've got for sure. So what do you think some of our main considerations? What are we looking for in our everlasting tree? So when you're going to buy this tree, we talked about lights.
Hmm.
Is yours an incandescent or an LED? Do you have a preference?
I don't know, but I think it's LED because it's fairly recent. So I think it's about 3 years
Oh, so
old.
it's probably LEDs. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the more natural looking for me was the when I was trying to choose them. And I know there's some like people like the white trees or the pink trees or what I mean, that with a bit more whimsy, and that the
Yeah.
fact that it doesn't necessarily it's fake anyway, so it doesn't necessarily have to look like a real tree.
Yeah.
Some of the ones I just clicked quickly on the garden center website and saw some, and they're artificial, but they come in a pot, so they look like they're real, that type of thing. So I think
Yeah.
for me it was how the lights are constructed and how the three that there are three, because that's a concern that everybody has, because we've all, back in the day when we were lighting our tree ourselves, for sure enough, one light would be out and the whole string would be out, right?
Yes.
So that is a concern for pre-lit trees, that if the light goes out, what happens. So you would want the ones that say that even if one bulb burns out, it's not going to affect the others.
Yeah.
So that's something, in the fine print there to read. And because
But
even if you comes with
the
extras,
majority of the new ones, yeah,
yeah,
are
are
avoid
that
that.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. Or avoid that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So we're reading the instructions as well. What you were saying?
No, even if they come with, some people are like, oh well, I've got the extra, they've sent 5 extra bulbs or whatever. Oh yeah, but you're gonna like try and find that, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna try and find that whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Always buy
yeah.
extra bulbs when you buy your tree because you never know.
Yeah.
And LEDs are going to be better than those incandescents because
Hmm.
they don't overload the ones on the string as they go.
Right.
They'll go and they'll leave the string. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't get hot. Like that was one thing growing
Mm,
up, right? That those bulbs got hot.
they
So
do get hot.
the lights have come a long way. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of shapes and sizes and different kind of styles. So you certainly can have a little bit more personality when you go with an everlasting tree, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Very customizable. Again, I love it because of the ornaments and the things that I can put on my tree to decorate it.
Hmm.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think your space too, because you might say it for a real tree, you want to get like a tall, narrow, skinny tree, but that could be like that's a unicorn, right? Like trying to find that right. Whereas if you've got a specific, narrow spot or a perfect spot beside the fireplace in your house, but it only would accommodate, a certain, like a pencil tree that you mentioned, but 9 feet, but high ceilings, 9 foot pencil tree. I mean, that's, it's screaming to get an everlasting tree or a fake tree, as opposed to that hunt every year for, it's hard enough to find a nice tree or a 9 foot tree every year, but let alone the 9 foot skinny tree. So,
Yes.
and that would not be an inexpensive real tree either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And hard to find a real tree with those
Hmm.
dimensions too.
Yeah. For sure,
For
for
sure.
sure. And so it just is hard to get over the environmental impact. Like you said, even the fact that they, not only the disposal, even if we do have them for 60 years before they end up in the dump, but there's that environmental impact of them being like being made in China and then um, shipped to us. So that's a huge environmental impact there as well, right?
Yeah, because not only are we rotting it, but it's all the manufacturers, the chemicals, the
Hmm.
smoke, the dyes, all that. Meanwhile, the live tree is just pumping out oxygen for you to breathe and filtering your air and water.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, Ray has written back again. Thank you, Ray.
I was
Did
just
you
gonna
see the
say, yeah.
message? Yeah. So Ray, he's with me again. Here in the States, we have a recycle program for artificial trees. Yay.
Nice.
And we might hear, Matt, maybe we should have, but they use the metal in different products, and the plastic paper combination of the branches is also reused in highway tar paving mixtures.
Oh,
So
good.
we are good here for whichever folks choose. Thank you so much, Ray. You have to tell us
Yes.
what state you're in. That would be really helpful. So yeah, so that is good news. And it's nice to see things are improving, right?
Slowly but surely,
Yeah,
yeah.
that there are alternatives and there are ways to kind of feel a little less guilty. So Greg, you and I am not less guilty now that we've got our everlasting tree kind of thing. So that is great. Thank you, Ray.
Kelly's also written in and it says, my live tree, and it has a picture of it. And Kelly, is that actually your live tree? That it's absolutely stunning. It's got
And
beautiful presents. This is like right out of HGTV magazine.
I know.
Like,
And Kelly, not only do you have your Christmas shopping done, but you have the everything wrapped in like matching wrapping paper. So yeah. Very envious right now, Kelly.
right? Karen's also
Um,
sent in that classic joke, trees for cats, Merry Christmas, cat people, and it's literally a wooden stick with 3 ornaments on the top.
yes.
So
Yeah.
true. So
Yep.
true.
And I've seen like other cat trees where it's a small short tree, but it's hung from the ceiling, so it doesn't reach the ground. So the cats share, the bottom of it looking up because the cat can't reach it, that kind of thing. So yes, the cat people have a bit of a challenge, right?
Yes. Luckily, the cats that my parents have, they were rescues
Okay.
from a barn that was going to be destroyed at a house that the 407 was coming through for. But being wild, and they're perfectly adapted now, but being wild, they saw some of their brothers and sisters when they were kittens being taken by the circle of life. So they find the Christmas tree is a protective space. So they have
Oh.
no interest in going underneath because they know that it's a shelter and a life-saving space for them. So, whew.
Yikes. Oh my goodness. That is very interesting. Oh, I'm so excited that you mentioned that, Ray. And David did write in, and I wrote him back. He said, folks, please remind all your listeners that purchase a live tree to save any needles that fall off of the tree. Sweep them up and keep them for mulch. Don't just throw them out. Use them. Okay, I missed the mulch part when I asked. I emailed them back and I said, "What? Use them for what?" So sorry, David, you did say mulch. So yeah, that's true. I mean, the one downside to them is the a little bit of needle drop you might get inside. But yeah, you can sweep that up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and put that back out in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. And if you could even put your tree out in the backyard on a tarp. So as they did just dry out, as it snowed or wintered, you could collect them all, put them all in there, and dispose of the wood or just the tree itself if they're losing that needles that bad. So
that's right. That's right.
So I mentioned the term molded tips. So
yeah.
if you do want an artificial tree, but you're looking for that realistic look, so what they've done is they've created molded tips. So they've taken the shape of a fir and pines. Not so much. I haven't seen very many pines, but firs and spruces, and they've taken the mold or they've cast it, and so now they're putting the cast or filling that cast with plastic. So you have all the tips look like a real tree. So you don't just have that little fuzzy papery plastic thing that goes down the branch. All of your tips are molded tips. So they look like a real tree from afar or from you're sitting it across the room. It looks like a real tree. Yeah. So that's something definitely if you love that natural, beautiful Christmas tree look, but you don't like that artificialness of it, but you love the longevity of the artificial, look for something with the molded tips for sure. And it'll give you that look.
Yeah, and look for ones that do have I mean, I think you get it. It's a prime example of you get what you pay for, right? So if you find it on sale for $129, yeah, it's not going to last you the 10 plus years that you want it, or the 20 plus years. So it really is an investment in finding something that is a quality tree. that looks good. And like, you know, it's come a long way, like you said, with the molded tips and the LED lighting, and even better tree stands too. Like, you know, they used to be a little bit precarious kind of thing, you know, 3 pieces of metal kind of whatever, but they're much more substantial now. And so yeah, so I think, you know, we've given you kind of both sides of the story, and I know most people, I'm sure most people have had their tree up already, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we've had up ours for a long time. Our artificial ones, they come out with Macy's Day Parade is our official start for Christmas. So we always do the Macy's Day.
Okay. Like American Thanksgiving. So you go with that. Yep. American Thanksgiving. That's your day.
We watch the parade and welcome Thanksgiving and watch for Santa. So everything comes up after that.
Okay. Well,
shortly after that.
That is very good.
Speaking of, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, speaking of putting Christmas trees up, I'm wondering if any of our listeners from Boston has seen Nova Scotia's gift to the city of Boston as of yet. Do you know the story behind the gift?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, every year, Nova Scotia gifts a Christmas tree to the city of Boston because of the 1917 Halifax Harbor explosion. So we had in the straits going into the city of Halifax in the harbor, a French ship collided that was filled with explosives, collided with a Norwegian ship, and a fire on the French ship caused all of the explosives to go off. Yeah, and so this was the largest explosion in man's history before any of the nuclear bombs. It was 2.9 tons of TNT. So Boston, hearing this on the wire, immediately filled a train with medical supplies, personnel, food, all sorts of goods that the city of Halifax needed. 2,000 were killed and over 9,000 were injured. And so they sent a train, which arrived a couple of days later. They had medical personnel to relieve everybody in Halifax, and people had slept for days through the rubble. 2 blocks were completely leveled in the city and destroyed. So every year, Nova Scotia, as a thank you for Boston's over 100 years, Nova Scotia picks a tree, cuts it down, and ships it. They cut theirs down on November 16th. This year, it was a 45-foot white spruce from Cape Breton Island in the municipality of Christmas Island. So we mailed them or sent them their beautiful tree. And every year there's a lighting ceremony in Boston. So a beautiful little thank you from Canada.
Yeah, it's kind of a tragic story, but a nice story all the same, right?
It is. They didn't think a thought, and they just came north, and all they did was help and just reached out to their neighbors. And that story resonates with me. 2 different countries, but neighbors. And that's what Christmas to me is all about, right? Is being with those ones and appreciating the ones around you. So I always love that little Christmas tree story. So
yes. Yeah. And then as we wind down the show, we did say, for those that might have tuned in later, that this is our last live show of the 2022. We will have a show on garden plants, a pre-recorded show next week.
That's right.
So your last minute gift ideas and holiday decorating or gift to buy yourself, who knows? That show, we know you will enjoy it, from a couple years ago. And then we will be back. We're going to take our little our typical January hiatus, but look forward to the new 2023.
That's right. I think it's a little longer than our typical hiatus at the moment forecasting. We usually come back that first week or second week of January, around the 12th. Right after the designers conference.
Yeah.
But, it might be a little later in January to the beginning of February. So just a heads
Don't freak Gary out.
Yeah. Don't freak Gary out.
Help.
I know. But you can definitely still, follow us on our social media, and we'll be putting out promos and letting you know when we'll be back. So, and Gary will as well. We'll definitely, watch for it from Reality Radio 101. But yeah, we know everybody kind of hunkers down in January and isn't really thinking too much about gardens. But we will be back, and when you're starting to think about seeds and wondering what's wrong with your house plants, right? And keep your show ideas coming. I know many of you have been emailing us show ideas and topics you want to hear. We would love that for the next year as we started, in this hiatus, we're going to do some planning and thinking and kind of so Gary, like we've been doing this radio show for 10 years.
Wow.
Gary has been stuck with me for Monday nights for 10 years.
Love it.
And Matt has been stuck with me for 6 years, I think. 6 or 7. Is it 7? It might be 7.
Is it 7? I thought it was closer to 5 or 6. Who knows?
Okay, so then I think it's 6. So I think I only did 4 years by myself before Matt joined me full time. So yeah, so that's a lot of shows and it's a lot of topics, and we've had some amazing guests. And and so we want to continue to bring you a quality show. So it takes a little bit of thinking but yeah, don't you think, isn't it great when people suggest, like the people that suggested, listeners that suggested Amaryllis? We just thought it was easier to do it in like a little mini episode, and get it to them as soon as possible. So we hope we helped you with that.
That's right. We love hearing your suggestions and ideas. We love hearing from you and just interacting with you all, but letting us know what you guys are thinking about and seeing really keeps us on point so that we can help you deliver what's trending or what's on your mind ahead of the trends, because there is a difference between Canada and the United States as far as what's trending.
Right.
Usually takes a couple of years to jump north of the border. So we love hearing from you guys. Most certainly.
That's right. And we can't end without our helpless plug for our own book. So if you are looking for a gift for yourself or for a loved one, we would definitely love for you to consider Down the Garden Path book, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden. And even if you're not in Ontario, the zones 5 through 8, all the topics, all the dates, all the months, all the details all still apply.
That's right. Like BC, you might just start in February or March versus April and May. So lots of relevant information in there for sure.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think with maybe 60 seconds or so, I maybe won't sign it off, but I just like to take a quick moment and say thank you, everybody, again, for a fantastic year here on Reality Radio 101. Thank you for tuning into Down the Garden Path. Again, whether you're listening live or listening on the podcast, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope you guys are surrounded by light and love and loved ones. Enjoy yourself. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Stay safe and happy. Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Gary, as well. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you to both of you. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for just continuing to join us here Down the Garden Path on Reality Radio 101, and a big shout out to Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.